and we're getting 20,000 cases in the community, it means that actually it's more dangerous for an Australian to come to New Zealand than for us to have an Australian in New Zealand. So it seems that this would be the appropriate time to open up the borders. And whilst technically the Prime Minister didn't give anything away yesterday, she was asked about the idea of opening up the borders, and this is what she said.
Just on the border reopening, is there any certainty you can give the tourist operators who have been hurting so hard for the 2 years? Is it likely Easter that they can be preparing to have people come back into their business?
I can tell them that the dates will be moving forward and that we'll be making those announcements on Wednesday. So within 48 hours, we'll be able to give that clarity to those operators around what the future of the border reopening looks like.
And is it likely that we would see what we've seen before, with Australia go first and the rest of the world to follow?
Yeah, we have taken into account a range of options, and we've taken into account those peak times for our tourism operators. We've tried to be really pragmatic about the decisions. But look, we'll be making those announcements in less now than 48 hours.
In fact, those announcements are going to be made today. So I guess we'll probably talk about this again tomorrow. But we thought if we are going to talk about opening the borders, I don't know if it's been leaked or it's been suggested. I'm not sure exactly what the correct terminology would be, George. But it's been suggested that the borders are going to reopen in April. That came out pretty much within about half an hour of the announcement yesterday. I'm not sure of the source of that. I guess we'll find out today 100% if that's confirmed. But as we've said, if there's 20,000 cases in the community, you're more at risk of coming to New Zealand now and catching COVID than bringing COVID in. And if you're fully vaccinated and you're protecting yourself, I don't know, maybe they have to do something with insurances and health insurance, George, in case someone gets it here and has to be hospitalized. But it seems that this is the time to open up the borders. Now, speaking of how important tourism is and how we need, I'll say or not need, but I think we also know need is the right answer to open our borders. We wanted to bring on an expert who can actually talk to us about it. He's from the New Zealand School of Tourism. He is the CEO. It's Ben Potter. And Ben, thank you for joining us on BHN this morning.
Thank you for having me.
No drama. Yeah. I bet for you guys. So New Zealand School of Tourism, let's just bring up your website so people can locate you. There we go. New Zealand School of Tourism. You are the CEO of it. I mean, obviously your life, your world, your conversations is going to heavily be around tourism, obviously teaching it to students, but having knowledge of it. Tell us what it's like today to understand for tourism operators primarily, the borders opening up. What does it mean for New Zealand?
Well, I think it just means that you can hopefully plan ahead in what the year might bring you, right? For us, in terms of training people, the jobs that were there pre-COVID, no longer there at the moment due to the international borders being closed to people not traveling. It just allows people a bit of hope, I guess, moving forward that things will get back to almost normal. And the industry itself is such a vibrant industry that's suffered greatly over the last two and a half years. That it'll take a little while, I think, for it to recover fully. But the first step is allowing international tourists back into the country.
Do you think that there's any issues? There are going to be problems because there's logistical issues. What are the problems facing New Zealand and facing tourism operators with reopening the borders? And like, I guess I'll preface it by asking you about, for example, are we going to be short of staff to operate the bungee jumping cords in Queenstown? Are there going to be any issues that have to be sorted out as well?
I think there are going to be issues depending on the business. Some businesses were able to keep more of their staff than others, but there's been a big shift of people out of the industry. So whether those people will come back, a lot of them will, because it's a really cool industry to be involved in. If you're passionate about people, you're passionate about travel, you want to do something different every day, then it's a really cool industry to be in. But there's going to be a lag because some people who were in the industry have moved on to other jobs and may not want to take what they may still perceive as a risk of going back into the industry after having secured something that's steady. So there's going to be a lag, but I think that'll also tie into a lag of international tourists coming into the country. I don't think come April the 12th, suddenly all the Australians who used to come to New Zealand will start coming in straight away. It'll take a bit of time, which will allow the industry to recover and to to give businesses the opportunity to ramp back up in terms of scale. Unfortunately, we have lost some businesses that won't return, but that just means that there's opportunities for probably new players to come into the market once more international tourists are allowed to come into the country.
Ben, I'm in education myself. I'm wondering how has teaching tourism changed in the last couple of years with COVID?
It's been a tough sell, right? The bad news, people talking about tourism and then people wanting to study tourism, they get questioned probably more so than anything else around, well, why would you want to study for a job in an industry that pretty much no longer exists, right?
It doesn't exist,
So it's been a tough 2 years. What we've been able to do, though, is we've been able to try and teach people that, now was probably the best time to study so that when it reopens, you're in a great opportunity to take the skills, the qualifications that you have and to move. We already saw that with our students already going offshore because offshore's already opened and the US and stuff. So we sent like 40 odd students to Broadmoor Resort in Colorado at the end of 2021. They're over there for 12 months doing job placements. So, the rest of the world was starting to open, but it's been really tough the last 2 years trying to work against a narrative where it's all doom and gloom. And rightly so, because, businesses have gone under, jobs have not been there, people have moved out. So, it's been tough over the last 2 years to get people into training for an industry that they see as like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I think the reopening of the borders, international tourists, tourism happening again, people from New Zealand being able to go overseas, that's our main market. Our main market of students in the tourism brand is people who want to travel, who want to be in that fun environment space. For 2 years, they haven't been able to do that. Now they've started to be able to do that. So it's bringing more interest in, actually, I want to go, but I want to go with a qual first. So therefore, I already know about the industry. I can get into it. And then I can bring those skills back to New Zealand. So, it's been tough 2 years.
Let me put it out there as well. One of the things I love about doing this as a live show, Ben, is that when things happen, we can announce them in our hour. Like, Simon Bridges announced his retirement at about 1:45 yesterday, and we were able to end the show with that, and we followed up today. You mentioned April 12th, and I thought, that's interesting. And that's because since we've been talking about this conversation, we started talking about it about 12 minutes ago, the Prime Minister announced, like, whilst we're talking about the border reopening, it's been announced that it is actually April 12th. So that has been announced 11:28, and you and I started talking at about 11:26. So there you go. This is literally hot off the press, fast, hard-breaking. The government will open New Zealand borders to tourists and others from Australia without residence visas on April 12th. It says stuff understands, but I mean, I think we can all take that as said. With you working a school in tourism, I realize it's, as you were saying it, I was thinking it, why would you go and, I mean, like, I'm not going to go and train in how to write and teach Greek anymore because it's not or ancient Greek, because it's not something that exists. My mum used to talk about the Iceman coming to her house and dropping off a load of ice to keep their refrigerator cool. I mean, I'm not going to get a job learning how to be an Iceman. I'm not going to get a job learning how to develop film anymore for cameras because it doesn't exist. So I get it as you're talking about these kids training for tourism in an industry that doesn't exist. But I'm wondering as well, will you now see an influx of students, or have you had a lot of students that you've been able to go, look, guys, we know that the industry is struggling at the moment. However, if you're trained up, as soon as it reopens, man, you're first off the rank. So have your numbers been steady, or do you also, much like the country, expect an influx right now?
We do expect enrollments to increase. It's the positive news stories about tourism just encourages sometimes not the person who wants to train, but their influencer who is probably in their ear going, why do you want to do that? There's no jobs there. There's no, stuff like that. Whereas that sort of argument becomes less now because there are jobs there. The world is opening up. We can prove it with students. The students who have stuck with us over the last 2 years are really well placed to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be coming over the next few months. We've already seen that with industries reaching out before this announcement to say, hey, we're going to gear up this year. We feel like we've come over the top of the big COVID hump, touch wood. So, the positive stuff from industry was starting. We were able to have those conversations with students. But I do think this announcement, other positive news, when we start seeing international tourists from other parts of the country come into New Zealand, not other parts of the country, other parts of the world, I should say, other than Australia, then yeah, there'll be a definite want again for those people who are really passionate about travel, want to get into that industry, who have probably been put off in the last 2 years, to actually go, yeah, now's the right time for me to follow my passion.
Yeah, and actually, it would be a really good time to get into training for tourism. It would be a really good time to come to New Zealand School of Tourism. Not that you're a sponsor of the show. I mean, you could be if you wanted to,
but thanks.
But I'm saying, because the people, I figure the people who have been training up the last 2 years are going to be first cab off the ranks, and then once tourism hits its normal things, there's going to be a need for people within New Zealand to work in the tourism sector. So it's like, it almost feels like it's a new sector again. It's like, for a while, getting into crypto was a very important thing because it was new. And it feels like now would be a good time to get into tourism, and somewhere like you guys at New Zealand School of Tourism would be a great place to come and try people's wares, so to speak.
Well, we think so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right, 100%. Now's the time to get that. I mean, like Ad says, to get your ticket to the world, because that's what learning about tourism actually gives you.
And I guess the ticket to the world,
starting to open.
Yeah, and the world's ticket now is about to have their ticket to New Zealand.
Yeah,
so that's
exactly.
That's a good thing as well.
That's a cool thing.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and I know just jumping in and being involved in a live stream show. CEO of New Zealand School of Tourism is Ben Potter. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.